No, it's just the Zoom. Yeah.
Do you have a Zoom?
Morena, everybody. Kia ora, I'm Angie Cancross from LIANZA, and I'd like to welcome you all here today. And before I hand over to Tom Smith to cover today's webinar on accessible features, Libby and PressReader, I'm going to open with a karakia. Whakataka tahau ki te uru, whakataka tahau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te ata kura, he tio, he huka, he ho hu, ti hei mauri ora. Okay, thank you, and I'm going to hand over to you now, Tom.
Okay, hi everyone. So my name's Tom Smith. My official title is it's like a long title that barely fits on my business card. It's Client Training and Senior Engagement Advisor at Blind Low Vision NZ. I just want to sort of first to say, but be very open about the things that I'm saying today, is that I do not have a lived experience of being blind or low vision. But in saying that, I'm just about at 20 years now working at Blind Low Vision. And so some of the things that I'm trying to demonstrate today are not kind of like a simulation of what it's like with low vision, but it's to try and sort of get across some of the issues that I see people coming through with accessing public library apps and services. So one of the things I've got a few things that I just wanted to sort of talk through first. Then I've challenged myself that I've got my iPad here, and we're going to go through the Libby experience using an iPad with VoiceOver, which is a screen reader, which we sort of talked about in some of the previous workshops. I'll talk about some of the accessibility features that are built into Libby, and then I've got three books or three types of content that we're going to actually look at for that. And then sort of like to sort of gauge the different types of experiences that those are like. And then for PressReader, I'm going to actually do that on my Windows laptop that I've got here. And with what I'm going to do is do that at about 400 times magnification. And I'm going to see if I can, how well I get on with reading with PressReader, but we'll also cover some of the accessibility features that are built into PressReader as well. So I wanted to cover those are the two main accessibility kind of features that we see a lot of, or a lot of people using, is using magnification or using some sort of screen reader to be able to read things out. I've also brought along, well, although I can't really sort of share it in any way, but at the end of it, if we've got time to talk about Kindles, the Kindle device, and I've got a one final little tip at the very end when I get to that. Okay, so I've got my chat open as well. I'm going to try and be better about that. If anyone has any questions, or if they can't hear anything or do anything, then please comment in that, and that's really helpful to me to be able to get any feedback as well. Right. Okay. So without further ado, I think the biggest thing that I wanted to sort of get across in this session today was that sort of like what comes up as sort of accessibility issues with obtaining any sort of digital content within the library. And I think the first thing to remember is that although some of the stuff we're going to say, then there's work that needs to be done, and there are challenges and what I term sort of like roadblocks to accessibility. It's actually a really great time for sort of like accessibility and digital content, you know, for people that have a print disability to be able to access content. There's a lot of great stuff that's going on, and there's a lot of accessible content. There's never been like a better time. And those aren't my words; those are words that I've borrowed off like one of my blind colleagues, who's Neil Jarvis, who works at Utopia, and who I know. And those were his words about saying that you know, it's never been a better time to be blind, I think was the phrase, was because the technology is so good. So I don't want this to be a down and negative session about things that that don't work, because I am including things that do work really well. Okay, and probably the first thing is that the part that I'm always talking about the most are the processes of actually getting to the book. Because a lot of people, I think, outside of the disability area, they kind of think, oh, how can I make the book? How can you read the book or access the book? But it's all the steps that you need to get there that can be actually the biggest struggle from an accessibility point of view. The first one is just getting, this is my very worn out Christchurch library card. But just the actual process of obtaining a card can be an accessibility hurdle. Is the process of getting the card a problem with someone with a disability to be able to get to? And even if you can get the card, can you read the number on the back so that you can then use the PressReader app or the Libby app? Those are all big, what I call accessibility roadblocks that can stop people from even trying. Because they don't know how to, excuse me, they don't know how to apply for a card or get to the card from that point of view. And that's like, the feedback that we get a lot of people. So sometimes it's not, as saying the theme of want to get across in this session is that it's not just the content of accessibility, it's the process of those steps that you need to actually get there. Okay, then there's the getting the card. Then there's the website. If you're logging in via a web service, accessing like the website has its own challenges and difficulties. The biggest challenge we see a lot of is people just, and this goes for I think a lot of sighted people too, is just remembering their username and passwords for things. Having the capture feature that we sometimes see on like contact us pages, and I get why people require those those capture features for so that they're not spammed and they don't have bots I guess sending a lot of email attachments. But those capture things, and by capture I mean those things we say like show me all the pictures of the bicycle or the buses. Those are a really big accessibility headache for a lot of people to be able to use. And I know some of them have a sound that you can use, but the sound is often muffled, like the images are muffled, or those ones with the letters. And then you're also dealing with a lot of people who have a vision loss, also will have a hearing loss. And so there's usually quite a large campaign to try and find out alternatives to capture. I know Google kind of have one that they're called like reCAPTCHA, which has been a bit more of a positive step forward. But this is, this is like a big kind of robot for a lot of people accessing services, especially when it's in a contact us page. So say if there's someone struggling, they want to try and log on, they try and use the online service, and then they come up to a capture, and then they give up. I've heard that a few times. Admittedly, they could use a phone and just to call on up as well. So maybe that's another step that you can encourage people to do, is if always got a phone call away if you've got that in mind. So I think there's being able to log in to the content is a big issue. The other issue that we have and is becoming more popular is what's referred to as two-factor authentication, which is where you might need another device, or you get a text message to be able to say that you need to require to log in, and it might be. And again, a lot of sighted people have issues with this, but from an accessibility point of view, it makes it even more of a headache when you're trying to say you're trying to log in to a service on a website, say like Libby or PressReader or BorrowBox, and then you might be required to authenticate on another device or through a text message to verify that who you are. Again, we understand the logic and the process for that, but it can make it a bit more of an accessibility headache from that point of view. So I think that's one of the things I just wanted to really be clear about on the onset, and to take away from this session is that it's the journey to getting to the book is often the problem people have. Once they get to the book, it's great and that it's all set up. And then quite often, this might be only a one-time only issue that they need. And so when they're logging in, there'll be a remember me feature or remember my login. And so the next time they are able to do it independently. So it may be that someone might require a little help logging in the first time, but then after that, then they can do it themselves. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a complete roadblock for people to accessing content. It's just that it's might be a little bit tricky to get through. So that's something to take a look at in your things. And if you need a hand, you could probably get hold of me as well, and we'll take a look. Now, there's just one other thing I want to talk about before I start diving into my demonstration, and that is book discoverability. And the reason why I bring it up is that it's a big sort of issue for us here at Blind Low Vision NZ, and that's just how do you find books and know books that you want to be able to get to. I don't have any easy answers for this because we're looking to sort of public libraries a little bit for answers to help us, but being able to just find books like anybody's. I mean, again, with a low vision, you're not really going to be seeing the displays or anything like that within a public library. And then within a screen reader, if you're using a device and you have all the displays of all the titles of all the magazines, you're not going to really visually see all of those as well. So, but there's an element of like, hey, you know, one of the issues that we're trying to sort of focus on is being able to help people discover books as well. And that's something that I've become increasingly passionate about is people finding books that they're passionate about. Okay, so that's my little off my soapbox for a little bit about that. So it's the process of getting to the books. I've got my iPad now, and what we're going to do is take a look at Libby. And I've got 3 books. So what I'm going to do now is bear with me while I share my iPad with the screen. We tested it before; it was all working fine. Everyone, you know, cross your fingers, cross your toes, and I'll. Right. Asking my password. Here's the way in. Right. Right. So can everyone see the iPad? I've got chat open. Okay. And right, put the sound on. What I was going to do now is we're going to go through Libby. This is my my book screen that we've got sort of displayed on here at the moment. I've got it set up so that you should hear voiceover. If you don't hear voiceover or you can't hear it very well, the text is displayed at the bottom. For some reason, they display it very tiny at the bottom. I'm going to say that getting voiceover to work via Zoom is really hard because those people at Apple are very clever. They think that I need the voiceover and that you don't. So they try and stop you from listening to what I'm hearing. So I've got to do all this sort of circus tricks to be able to make sure that you can hear it. But first of all, just going to talk about Libby first in terms of accessibility features. So I'm just going to start it up. So in Libby, which we all know is, is sort of a product of Overdrive. If we go into the settings, you'll see it has a set of accessibility features. And again, some of these are good, and some of these are kind of, they're all good, let's say, but varying degrees of good in terms of like, you know, what I see as being useful to a lot of people. The reducing the color variation is actually probably quite handy. And I think actually probably a lot of people would probably just benefit from that in the first place, because I'm not sure about you, but the purple and green thing is kind of quite, I would say, quite low contrast. And so taking that as sort of is quite helpful. Reducing the text variation. Again, that's a very minor change and it probably won't sort of affect a lot of people. But again, I mean, that is kind of quite helpful that it does that. But it's not something that we hear a lot of people sort of having an issue with, of like, oh, there's too much. Usually it's sort of like the text is too small, or it's usually a contrast issue, or it's too small and too big, and being able to do it that way. Reducing motion. This was actually like several years ago. I think it was iOS 7 when Apple they introduced this feature within iOS, and everything zoomed in and out really quickly. And then so an accessibility feature got put in to do it, and it's what was referred to as a vestibular disability, where people were using the devices and it was making them feel a little bit seasick. And this is just a way of being able to switch that off. And again, this isn't something that I've seen a lot of people use because it affects them very badly, but it's more of a sort of like, I just more of like a preference to do it. And to be honest, I actually switch it off. One of the first things I do if I've got an iPad is actually switch that off. And similarly with reducing the vibrations as well. Again, it's not something I've had someone really struggling with vibrations issues. It's not. Again, it's a bit more of a personal preference. Okay, the next one is really about the orientation, which is, I think, again, it's another one of those things where I think it can become really handy, where you can stop it if you move your iPad around, moving sort of portrait to landscape, because I think a lot of people will be using probably Libby in portrait mode, and then if you turn it around, it won't sort of like keep on moving around all the time. So in this way, you can use Libby with a sort of a smart orientation or system orientation, which means it obeys the rules of the iPad, or you can set it to small. But I mean, again, it's one of those things you can within the settings of the iPad lock it so that it doesn't shift around from portrait to landscape. So it's another one of those sort of type things that you've got. Now, one of the things that is quite neat with Libby, I think that is quite good, is that they do have keyboard controls for Libby with an app. And I can send them out. I do have them as a little Word document that I've got. And so that if you have a Bluetooth keyboard set to your iPad, you can use the right arrow on the space bar to move to the next page. You can use like, and same controls work with audiobooks as well. So that's sort of like quite a handy thing to know about, because it's sort of, I think some people can struggle with using the screen, with using gestures. So having a keyboard is, especially if someone's familiar with using a laptop, they can use a keyboard in conjunction with Libby. So Libby have a built-in keyboard shortcuts that you can use when you're using it on an iPad or iPhone. Right. I guess there's nothing more to it, but I'm going to have is to go right in. Now, I've already borrowed 3 books to try and demonstrate what the experience is like using VoiceOver, which is the built-in screen reader on content within the library. So I'm just going to go back out of these accessibility settings. And use my Auckland Library files. I'm not naming and shaming Auckland libraries, by the way. It just happens to be the content that I'm using at this moment that we're given to demonstrate. But here we go. Okay, so I've got Well, I've got 4 books in here. There's 3 books that I'm going to demonstrate. So one of them is a graphic novel that I was going to sort of take a look at. One I got is a cooking book, or a cookbook, and I've also got like an audio book, which is of Harry Potter as well. So I'm just going to take a look at these 3 books, and then sort of give you an idea of what the experience is actually like using the screen reader. So how I start up the screen reader, I've got it set up so I press the home button 3 times. And then
voiceover on. Libby, you are at shelf. Landscape. Home button to the left.
Okay, I'm just checking. Oh, hang on. Right, I'm just checking that you can all hear that. Thumbs up, maybe. I can't sort of seem to. Oh, hang on. Oh, hang on. You share. Ah. Well, I mean, the thing is that I'm not hearing anything either at the moment. I'll just turn it off again and then.
Voiceover on. Libby, you are at shelf. Landscape.
Okay.
Home button to the left.
It makes me nervous that it works once, and I did the same thing and it works. It works once and then. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into Cooking School. As I said, the text of it goes on to bottom. I will, while it's going on, while voiceover stops, to give you an idea of what voice is. Now, how voiceover actually works is actually voiceover is actually quite a complicated sort of a feature of iOS, and it's kind of like how it works is kind of like nothing like you've ever seen before. It's a gesture-based screen reader, which is what we've never seen before, because all the other screen readers works like a keyboard focused, so you have to do everything through the keyboard. This one is sort of predominantly gesture-based. I'm going to treat it fairly simply because you can use voiceover in quite a simple way. And how you can sort of think of it is it takes everything on the screen and puts it on a list based on sort of like top to bottom. And then you swipe from left to right to be able to access all the different things. It's a longer way of being able to do things, but it's a nicer, simpler way of doing things. And then to do the equivalent of what we would do as a tap, you double tap on that selection. But I just really also want to sort of get across the idea of that using this doesn't need to slow you down at all. It's actually, I mean, some of the voiceover users that I've worked with would easily outstrip a lot of sighted people I know in using an iPad or an iPhone. There's lots of advanced features that are built in. One of the things that I quite like is that if you do a 3-finger triple tap, yes, there's 3 fingers 3 times, it puts on a screen curtain, which means it makes the screen go blank so that you can do your phone banking privately. There's those kind of advanced features that are really cool that are built into it. So I really just want to get that idea across of that. That this doesn't necessarily have to be slow and clunky. That's probably me that's being slow and clunky, not the tool. Okay, let's go back into it. Hopefully the voice is still working.
Manage loan.
Okay.
Button.
So what I'm doing here is swiping left and swiping right throughout the screen to be able to get to the book. So the one that I'm wanting to get to is the Cooking School.
Due in 20 days. You have read 17%. Link. Book. The America's Test Kitchen Cooking School Cookbook. By America's Test Kitchen. Heading Level 3. Title status. Borrowed. 100% downloaded. Button. Open in Libby. Button.
Okay, so I'm at the button, the place where I want to go. Visually, there's like a highlight around it as well, that is helpful to us. So now when I'm swiping left and right to get to these controls. To access the button, I double tap, and I double tap anywhere on the screen. That's what's kind of cool.
You are at open.
And we've already got a little bit stuck. Oh. Down pages. Right, okay, it's just loading up the book. It's taking a little bit of time. I'm actually doing this presentation at home today because I wanted to try and get a vanilla Wi-Fi so that everything would kind of work in the same place, same as it would in a home, rather than our sort of a work-based ones. Okay, so Libby does, when you see it says double tap with 2 fingers to read from here. I'm in actually a page that's actually dealing with cooking with vegetables. And the thing I wanted to sort of take a look at is how it actually treats images, is kind of like what we wanted to do. And it's gone silent again, hasn't it?
Turn pages. 9%. Dimmed. Adjustable.
Yeah, all right.
Place bookmark. Place bookmark. Dimmed. Button. Place bookmark. Form control not found. Form control not. Form control. Link headings. No item found. Heading not found.
Okay, and this is what's happened here, and I haven't done. I have to hand up and confess, I didn't do this on purpose. It's got stuck, and this happens quite a lot in VoiceOver, because VoiceOver is in a spot that I can't visually see on the screen. I'm going to sort of turn it off and turn it on again. This is the common way of being able to fix any of these kind of like VoiceOver issues. So turning out perfectly, so it's not picking up any of the text. So the easiest way to fix this is to I'll just switch off VoiceOver and put it back on again. Hang on, just asking the question to Vanessa T. VoiceOver should read the book, can read the book if it's text-based, and all the controls. It's supposed to be sort of like the equivalent of the screen to someone with a vision loss. But I'm just going to turn it off and back on again.
Alert. Access VoiceOver off.
Right. Right.
Chapter. Heading Level 1. Document. Landmark. Chapter 3 How to Cook Vegetables. ATK cooking school chapter opener or photo. Image. Turning out perfectly cooked. Flavorful.
Okay, I'm not sure if you noticed there, but it did actually recognize the image, and it did actually provide some alt text. It didn't actually really describe the image in terms of that it was a plate full of vegetables or a roast vegetables, but it did actually have some alt text in there that actually to read it out. One of the cool things about using VoiceOver as a screen reader, if you use two fingers and you swipe down, that's the word I'm looking for, swipe down, it'll start, it's like a read all command. And also if you use two fingers and you double tap and to start and stop it as well. So I'm just going to give you a little moment just to sort of give you an idea of what it's like.
Turning out perfectly cooked, flavorful vegetable dishes requires some finesse. In this chapter, we start with demystifying the art of picking out the freshest vegetables at the market, share the best ways to store them, and illustrate how to prepare them for cooking. There are numerous ways you can cook vegetables, and each method has its own tricks. Here we cover everything from properly boiling and steaming to roasting, frying, grilling, to mashing. Casseroles that make vegetables the star are also included inside this chapter.
Okay, I'm just going to stop it there. I mean, I'd say this is going sort of fairly well. We did get a little bit stuck at first because there's sort of like a reading mode that Libby goes into, but I managed sort of to get into it. I'm having a little, I mean, with the VoiceOver sharing with the Zoom is causing a little bit of glitching, and I can't hear the Zoom text. I can't hear, sorry, VoiceOver sometimes as well, so that's causing a little bit of issue. But the thing is that, and when I tried this before in demonstrations, it works quite well. And the biggest issue we have with, I think, material like this is the images. So if you've got a book that's very text heavy, that generally works quite well. The more images it has, and that's the reason why I chose like a cookbook, and cookbooks also have tables, and I always find they're my test case for a lot of publications is, all right, let's take a cookbook and see what it's like, because there's bulleted lists and numbered lists and tables sometimes as well. So I find they're a good place to kind of test out the accessibility. So I think this is working sort of fairly well in terms of that. So I'm just going to exit out of that.
Alert. Exit guided selected. VoiceOver off.
All right. Now the next content that I just wanted to look at back. I should have chosen a smaller block, I think. Here we go. Right. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is a graphic novel. And what I'll do is I'll start VoiceOver again. I'm not.
Alert. Accessibility shortcut. Cancel button. Airplay. You page 1 of 2. Shelf. Head book. Night title status. Open book.
Right.
Button.
Get back on there. Now again, the voice actually came off for me, right? Not just for all of you as well. That's very unique. I haven't had that sort of happen before, apart from when we're doing this. So I can see it's still working. So hopefully you can all still hear it as well. I'll talk through. There's probably not a lot of surprises about what's going to happen.
You are at
with the graphic
dismiss
novel.
navigation button. Alert. Selected. VoiceOver button.
And what's strange is that the voice goes away, but then as soon as I bring this back up, the voice seems to magically reappear again.
Cancel. Libby, you are in page mode. Knife's Edge, a graphic novel. Hope Larson.
Okay, so if I do like a read all command like I was doing before.
You are in page mode. Knife's Edge, a graphic novel. Hope Larson. Turn pages. Pages 1 2. Adjustable. Play button. Header. Landmark. Read from here. Button. Front cover. Document. Landmark. Swipe down with 2 fingers to keep reading. Front cover. Document. Landmark. Next part. Button.
So you can see, I mean, like all of that text that's on the front page doesn't get read out at all. It's an image. The text is the image on the page. Even if I try and sort of move on to the next part button.
Next part.
You see that the read aloud feature is not picking up any text in the contents of the graphic novel. So all it's asking me to do is to go to the next part. I'm going to see if I can try and exit out of this sort of.
Exit read aloud. You are in page mode. Knife's Edge, a graphic novel. Hope Larson. You are in page mode. Knife's Edge, a graphic novel. Hope Larson. Turn pages. Pages 3 4. Adjustable. Place bookmark. Button. Header. Landmark. Read from here. Button. Assistive. Landmark. Menu. Button. End. You are in a dialogue. Menu.
And so this is what I was talking about before, about just bringing this back up, about some of the key commands actually come up within here. I think there's an assumption that somebody might be using a screen reader, that they'll be using a keyboard as well. This is not always the case, that if someone's using a screen reader that they are using a keyboard to navigate around and using some sort of gesture controls.
You are in a dialogue. Menu. You are in a dialogue. Contents. You are in a dialogue. Contents.
So
7
I'm able to
Manano.
navigate some of those
Button.
controls to be able to go through. So by moving around, I was able to get into a contents section. I'm just going to pick a random chapter, which always makes me nervous, Arnold. And if we so we're able to navigate around the book with voiceover, but we're still not able to access any of the content. And so no matter how hard I try, and even using sort of some of Libby's accessibility tools, I'm still not able to access any of the content here. And admittedly, on this page, it's got Alex, O, and Cy as part of the text that's on there. I do know online that there's a lot of there are people that are really doing a lot of good work in this space in terms of accessibility with graphic novels and doing audio described images for content. So again, I wanted this to be sort of like quite a positive thing, and I've seen some amazing tools and people doing graphic novels in the accessibility space. It's just that there's probably so much content that people can't access. And I think the thing is, I don't want anyone to think, oh, because I can't access this, everything's inaccessible, or vice versa, of that because some content is accessible, that this is not accessible. So that was kind of like a graphic novel, I've demonstrated kind of what I wanted to sort of show, that there's no way for the screen reader to actually read any of the text that's actually sort of what is sometimes referred to as like baked into the image. Okay, right, just going to go.
Libby. Pages 4. Libby. You are in page mode. Alert. Accessibility. Select voiceover off.
Okay, right, I'm just going to go. There we go. Right. So the last one that I kind of wanted to show is an audiobook. And again, there's probably not too many surprises here about how this should go. So I'm just going to start this back up. Actually, I'm just sort of conscious of time, so I'll
Voiceover on. Libby. You are in navigating mode. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. J. K. Rowling.
Yeah, I know it's a bit
Landscape.
an easy hit to
Home button to the left.
to choose Harry Potter, but this Stephen Fry's narration I think is really good. So all I'm needing to do now is what's sort of a great advantage is that all I need to do is get to the play button, and then I'm able to access the audiobook. And I'm pretty sure I could actually do even just a 2-finger double tap. And again, it plays the content straight away. It's not coming through now. Again, I'm not sure if it's because of that. And you can, I'm not sure if on your screen, but on mine. There we go, right. So I'm seeing like about a delay in you can see the time moving along on the top left screen of the duration of things. You may not be able to hear anything right because I think that might be a DRM, digital rights management thing of me not being able to put Stephen Fry over across. But you can tell, but what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that an audiobook experience through Libby from an accessibility point of view is really good. And we do have people that are actually using it. And so that's the point that I wanted to get across, is that that it's getting, you know, that an audiobooks is generally sort of like the most accessible format for us to be able to get through, and not just sort of
stared from his purple-faced uncle to his pale aunt, who was trying to heave Dudley to his feet. "All right," said Harry. "All right." Uncle Vernon sat back down, breathing like a winded rhinoceros, and watching Harry closely out of the corners of his small, sharp eyes. Ever since Harry had come home for the summer holidays, Uncle Vernon had been treating him...
Right, so I just needed to be patient with it. So finally, the sound sort of like came through. So audiobooks, I mean, all I had to do that time was a 2-finger double tap, plays the content, 2-finger double tap, stopped it. I can use the navigation controls quite happily as well. So audiobooks is a really good experience with Libby using voiceover, whereas like graphic novels and some text-based books. And I think it's probably fair to kind of say, you know, to talk about now, is that it probably comes as no surprise that there's generally a preference for human narration over a sort of like synthetic speech. Even though how really good synthetic speech is, when people are especially reading for pleasure, there's still quite a strong preference for having audio, having a human narration. But synthetic speech is sort of preferable for a lot of people for using like email or websites, or reading sort of you know, short amounts of content. And a lot of the reason why is because of speed, because a lot of people who are using screen readers will have it set really fast, and so that they actually do want, whereas a very sort of good human narration voice, you can't sort of get it to read very fast, or it will start skipping over itself. But when people are reading for pleasure, they're usually just wanting it to sort of to relax and have it all sit back and enjoy it, and they don't necessarily want it so fast, and that's where the human narration sort of comes in. So there's still a place for synthetic speech, especially within newspapers. I mean, we can't get it turned around enough fast enough to be able to do that in the first place. So that sort of becomes an issue as well. It's just the time that's required to get something narrated. Right. So that was Libby. So in summary, I think, you know, it's a mixed bag, and I think that's the message that I wanted to get across about what accessibility sort of features that are. And I think, you know, I mean, I think to be fair, graphic novels are intrinsically, you know, tricky in terms of the accessibility because they're so visual and image based in the first place, and it's always going to make them hard in terms of an accessibility. So I think there might be a little bit of an argument I was a bit unfair from that point of view, but I think the people, you do want to know that, you know, that the text in it isn't accessible. Even if the text was inaccessible, it's not necessarily it'll just be the dialogue, and you wouldn't have any context about what was going on with the images in the first place. And it would be tricky to kind of put it in a narrative sort of like style. Okay, I can stop sharing the iPad. Next one is to is to look at PressReader. So now I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, so one of the things first wanted to talk about was the built-in features that PressReader have actually already done, the accessibility features that are already included. They do have what you have to turn the turn on accessibility mode on. So there's part of me that thinks, wow, that's great, they've got some accessibility features, but I kind of feel like things should be in accessibility mode all the time because it would benefit everybody, a lot of the features. So I don't quite understand. Again, it's sort of quite an old, what I would sort of say, an older way of thinking of accessibility, when a lot of websites would have accessibility features that are that you could turn on or off, like making things bigger. You should be able to, it should be sort of accessible out of the box. It's kind of the way of thinking. Let's just take a look at the features that they break them up into 4 different sections. Again, PressReader has keyboard navigation, font enhancement, article view, and sort of compatibility and things about. And I think with compatibility, I think they're talking about with audio, with being able to have it with speakers and hearing aids. And that's another thing that I think iPhones and iPads are doing some sort of good work with, is working with companies with a hearing loss, so that if you are sort of using an audio book, it can actually be used for transmitted straight to your hearing aids. The keyboard navigation and with PressReader is just really being able to have some keyboard controls to be able to move around. I'm just going to go through these quickly. I'm just sort of quite conscious of time. Font enhancement, article view, which makes things a little bit easier in terms of having seeing the whole content of the screen, of all the text. And that's what I was saying was compatibility, which is reading and listening for everyone. So you've got sort of and they build in some text to speech. But again, one of the issues with the text to speech with things like PressReader is how are you going to find the button to start the reading for speech? But sort of links back to what I was saying very early on, is that often the issue is the journey to getting to accessing the content in the first place. Okay, so I'm going to try and log into PressReader. Now, so how I'm actually going to do this is use, there's various ways of using magnification on a laptop, and this is what I'm sort of demonstrating now. The common piece of software is one that's called ZoomText, which creates sort of magnification, which is quite popular. What I'm going to use here is what's called Microsoft Magnifier, which is a built-in magnification that you have on Windows PCs. A lot of people kind of like use this as sort of a bit of an at-home solution. The main reason is that ZoomText is quite expensive. I mean, often these accessibility software can sort of get up to about $1,000 for like for JAWS, which is like a very common sort of screen reader. They can get quite expensive. So a lot of people are using the built-in features, even though that they're not as good as, I mean, you'd expect something that's $1,000 to be really good, wouldn't it? So, but not everyone has that kind of to be running around. So I'm using Microsoft Magnifier. It's actually a lot better than it sort of like used to be. You can use Windows control. So if you go Windows and the plus key, it magnifies the screen. Now I have this set to 400%. There we go. And the reason why I set it to 400% was 400% was about the screen size when I was sort of working, that we would sort of say that sort of, if you were any more than that, you would probably be better off with a screen reader. 400 was about the guide, but then it's very much personal preference. A lot of people were very different. I know I did work with someone who went up to 900%. It was 9 times magnification. and she loved it, and she had no problem with it at all. And when we're sort of doing the assessment, that was what she liked. To have a much bigger screen. That $1,000 software makes all the letters nice and smooth. So on this demonstration is sort of, it makes it all like a little bit blurry. The point that I'm trying to get across now is that if you make things bigger, it doesn't always make things better. And I think one of the things that the common sort of threads that we get with magnification is that is this how disorientating it can be to be able to get through. So this is the PressReader website, and you can see I'm already logged in. I wanted to save you from the trying to log in with magnification, because I think we've sort of talked through that issue. All I want to try and do is access my magazine that I purchased, and you're probably seeing a little bit of a theme now that I like to cook, and sort of a lot of things I get is like cooking magazines. And so prior to this, I purchased a cooking magazine just to try and make it sort of really easy, but we'll see how we get on. You can see, because of these images, these are image-based covers that they've got, they look a little bit blurry and pixelated. Even with the expensive software, it's not going to really do a lot to be able to get through. Animals and pets. Let's see if I can. I'm just trying to, as you can see, I mean, I'm up to getting the idea of that. It's start seeing my screen. Right, I'm actually going to search for the magazine. And you can kind of, and this is quite a common thing, is that you get this string of when you're magnifying, is that it's a lot of like white space everywhere, which is good. I mean, visually, I mean, I have, I think, a bit of a design mentality as well, but it's quite hard to, oh, so you're not seeing the magnification in action? Oh. Okay. Thanks for the person that mentioned that in chat. What I'll try then is I'll take that Windows one off, and I'll try it within the browser, because this should work. Okay. What I'm sort of like seeing now, and thanks Melissa for sort of pointing that out. So the screen magnifier I was using wasn't magnifying things on your screen through Zoom, but it was doing it on mine, even though I was sharing it. What I'm using now is a browser magnification. So I'm using the magnification within Chrome, but it does actually provide me with quite different results. And actually, a lot of cases, probably I would say it's a better method for a lot of people, is being able to use the magnifier within the browser, or in this case within Chrome, because then you don't having that sort of that moving aroundness that you have so much with the magnifier. If you're ever wanting to try with the magnifier, just to sort of echo those things again, if you're using a Windows machine, is the Windows key and plus will turn on the magnifier. And if you go, oh my gosh, what have I done? It's Windows and Escape to turn it off. So what I've got here is, here's my magazine. And you can actually see it is a bit tricky to get into. So I'll try and get into the soup it up. Okay, I'll be fair to first, and what I should do, because I could easily kind of say, hey, look, all that menu took up all that screen, but when I had it sort of magnified within the browser. But I think just to be fair, I will put on the accessibility mode is on. Okay. I thought I had, it's remembered from my testing that I did yesterday and this morning. So I do put it back on. Also, I found I've taken the accessibility setting switched off, and this is what I noticed in my testing as well, is that I found it very difficult to find the magazine that I had read before with the accessibility settings on, and but when I took it off, the recently read thing appeared, whereas when I had the accessibility settings on, so just conscious of time, I've only got sort of a couple of minutes, is to go through, and we'll do a quick read now, and then see what this is like with the magnification. Back on. So I was saying about 400 was when I was going through, and this is sort of saying it's not unrealistic for someone to use this. I'll probably make it, to be fair, a little bit more, say about 200. But you can see what it's done is that in order of making the navigation bigger, it's become a bit of a sacrifice in terms of the real estate that's able to display any sort of content. So if I go into, so I'm going into text view. It looks like it's crashing in text view. Right. Okay. It's, as you can see, it's got the I've got the spinning wheel of death on there with the text view trying to load in. But I think I've demonstrated what I kind of wanted to demonstrate is that although there are some accessibility features built into PressReader, it doesn't necessarily make it a beautiful experience from an accessibility point of view. I think, I mean, it looks really nice visually as a non-disabled person. I kind of appreciate some of the polish that it does have, but I think that that's come at a little bit of a cost of being able to just read the text in sort of in a plain mode. It's a shame I can't access the. I'll put it back at 100%. See if that. It's going to reload that page. Right, so this is the text mode, and again, I mean, like one of the big things that we sort of like we talked about with magnification is that when you're sort of reading across, and what I've got here is it says, you know, where the dish team is eat, and then sort of like if you've got it magnified quite high, you've got some vision that's sort of like you've got central vision, you then might go straight across here and go into Bluesberry's in, and then you're a little bit disorientated. So I mean, it's got, I can see here they've got some sort of like lines down in the columns, which is good, but they're very, very light in terms of how you can see. So the layout sort of like makes it sort of quite tricky to kind of to read across. I mean, what would improve this, in my point of view, from an accessibility point of view, is if these lines were a lot darker or like a solid black line. So that if you're using magnification, you could hit it and then you go, oh, okay, that means I need to go down to the next one. And so just a little thing, when I sort of tried this out with a screen reader, it was sort of similar issues with PressReader as it was with Libby. Again, it's like text images and for magazines and areas like that. But it does have like a read aloud feature. But again, it's a matter of getting to that read aloud. So just two quick things. Just wanted to finish up. Just very sort of conscious of time. One is the Kindle I talked about. I know that library content isn't accessible through the Kindle, and that you're at the mercy of Amazon and the Amazon shop. But it does actually have some sort of good accessibility features. What I've got in my hand is a Kindle Paperwhite, and that's the thing that I wanted sort of to get across, is that the e-ink Kindles are sort of like I'm finding being quite popular because of basically the lack of glare is sort of the big thing for a lot of people with devices that with the shininess. It's the glare that sort of can cause a lot of problem. There's some good sort of accessibility features within these within the Paperwhite Kindles. Despite not having a headphone jack, you can actually link it up to Bluetooth speakers or Bluetooth headphones to listen to audiobooks and to listen to content that's being read out. It actually has its own screen reader built into it as well. So that's sort of like the reason why I highlight that is I know some people that are using that. Also, in terms of making the screen bigger and smaller, it's the process is a lot easier and a bit easier process of being able to do that. So you can even, I think, load up your own fonts on there, and it does have sort of like the open dyslexic font, for example, as things there. And then finally, I just wanted to sort of to sum up things in a sort of a simple kind of way. Don't underestimate a magnifying glass. We still have a lot of people that will use a handheld magnifier to get through. If someone's using, even sort of going back to the print books to be able to use a magnifier, the one thing that we kind of do recommend, we do actually have people in our organisation that will do a specialised magnification assessment. They're really kind of quite important to they become really kind of still have a place and still kind of important. So we have people that will do magnification assessments because there's lots of different types of magnifiers, ones with lighting built in that are really important. So we do have people that sort of specialize in that area. Probably the biggest thing that we look at for people using handheld magnifiers is posture, because you find a lot of people that are using magnification might get sore necks or a sore back from sort of leaning over too much. But there's still a place for old school magnifiers. So I think, that's what I wanted to cover with this session. Thank you for bearing with me with all the technical side of it. I must admit, I was sort of anxious about making sure that VoiceOver was all going to work through all the content. But I think that's the big messaging that I wanted to get across today, was getting the idea that it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of accessibility. There's things there like Libby with an audio book, for example, is a really good experience. Whereas something like the comics can be quite tricky. So the thing is that it's going to be difficult for a lot of people to assess what they can and can't access. And I think the thing that I have the biggest fear of is somebody not trying or not doing anything because they think they have one experience that it's inaccessible, and then they're not able to, or they're not able to get a card, or they're not able to get to log in, and then they think they can't get to the kind of get to the content. And so something that we're working on more and more in my space here at Blind Low Vision NZ. And so if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to do a bit of a one-on-one session later on and looking at people's content. Bring it on. We're really excited about that, the future of it. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tom. Another very informative, practical session. And I'd just like to close with thank everyone else for coming along, and I'd like to close with a karakia. Anuhia, anuhia, anuhia ki te uru, tapanui, kia wātia, kia māma te nākau, te tinana, te wairua e te ara tangata, koia rā e rongo, whakairia ake ki runga, kia tina, tina, huie, tai kie. Thank you. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.